You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show lined for y'all today. Today, we have a true honor talking to Dennis J. Henson. He's the author of the book that we are going to have a good time discussing this morning. It's Real Impact Daily Inspiration. It's an amazing website you go to. It's realimpactbook.com. And first and foremost, Dennis, I want to say thank you for taking time talking to us today. How are you doing this morning?
Just great, Shamaya. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, I appreciate you being on. Your book highlights a lot of important points. Improving your life is something that we all really care about when we're trying to strive for success, but it takes commitment. So before we talk about your book, kind of share with the audience a little bit about your professional background.
Well, I started out as a band director back in 1970 and decided that I would really wanted to be a college band director. High school had its challenges, and so I went back and got a master's degree. And after that, I was offered a really great high school job. And so I took that, but I really wanted to be a college band director. So we did really well. I did really well. The band did super. We marched in the Pasadena in the Rose Bowl parade, and we got superior ratings. And Georgia Tech contacted me and said, "We want you to become our band director." So I moved to Atlanta to become the Georgia Tech band director, and was to sign the contract the next day when a large company out of Tennessee called and said, "Look, we want to hire you because of your success." And I said, No, I have a dream job. I'm going to be the band director at Georgia Tech. So they said, "Let us fly you here. We'll give you a steak. We'll buy you a cigar. We'll pick you up in a limousine." Well, I didn't really want to go, but I couldn't turn down a round trip ticket because in 1975, you didn't get to fly much. And I was a kid, so the next day I was in Memphis and picked up with a limousine, and they took me to this beautiful facility, and I still wasn't interested. And then they started talking money. They offered me 20 times what Georgia Tech was going to pay me. And so I took it, that was when I went into the business world. So that was in 1975. And the first thing they did was they gave me 3 books: Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Success, the Glenn Bland Method, and The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. I read those books, and I was a different person after I read those books. I mean, I had never heard of a self-help or motivational book, and I mean, I was on fire. I went out and I made so much money. I bought a house, I got a Mercedes-Benz, I got married. I mean, I had toys. I was just super successful. And I started investing in real estate. Now, I had dabbled in real estate before when I was a band director. So I actually started investing in real estate in 1970. So I've been in it for a long time. So over the years, I had invested more and more and more in real estate, and I kind of worked out of my other jobs. I've done everything. I've owned a lot of businesses, but I finally just decided, well, real estate is the best way to go. So when I moved to Texas 35 years ago, it was like a kid in a candy store. There's so much real estate in Texas. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I was successful, but I wanted to attend real estate investor meetings. And I live in Arlington, and the Metroplex is big. So if I wanted to go to a meeting in Dallas, it was an hour. If it was traffic, hour and a half or 2 hours. And same way with Fort Worth. So I just said, well, I'll just start a group. I started a real estate group in Arlington, and people came from Dallas and Fort Worth. I had a really, really successful and big group. And I started teaching classes. I taught the classes so I would learn more. If I wanted to learn about short sales or subject to or probate, I would schedule a class, and then I'd have a month to learn. about that and be able to answer people's questions. And I got better and better. So one day, one of the members came up and said, Dennis, his name was Mike, Dennis, I'm going to retire and I want you to mentor me. I'll pay you. And I said, well, Mike, I don't have time. You know, I'm doing my real estate. I have these meetings. I'm not interested. And he says, well, let me take you out to lunch because I think you're going to be my mentor. I told my wife, I'm not going to do this. So I'm just going to go have lunch and tell him no. So we went and ate lunch. And after lunch, he reached in his pocket. He had on a suit. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a checkbook and handed it to me and said, here, fill that in. And I said, you mean the amount? And he said, yes. So I laughed and I thought, okay, I'll put an amount here that nobody in their right mind would pay. I mean, and that'll be the end of this. So I put an amount down and handed it back to him. He took the check out and signed it and handed it back to me without even looking.
Wow.
He didn't even look. And so that's when I started teaching. So I taught for almost 20 years, over 15 years. And podcasts were just getting started. So I was speaking at expos and going to real estate because my students were so successful. I was in demand. People want to know, how come your students are so successful? So the podcast host asked me one day, he said, Dennis, why are your students so successful? I mean, there's all these mentors out here, but yours just really flourish. And I said, well, I haven't changed their habits. If they can form success habits, they'll become successful. It's just that simple. And then he said, well, what's the number one success habit? And I said, well, if they'll form the habit of reading something positive every day that moves them toward their goal, they will become successful much faster. So after the podcast was over, I thought, that was absolutely the right answer. Wouldn't it be great if there were some kind of a tool to help people form that habit, an app or a book? And then it hit me. Back in 1975, when I read those 3 books, I started collecting books that really motivated you. I mean, really powerful books. And I had kept a list for 50 years, and I'd also collected poems, quotes, and short stories. And I used them in my training, and I thought, well, I'll just put those all together in a book, and in a couple of months, I'll have a book, and I can use it in my training, and then I can, I'll publish it, and we'll see what happens. 6 years later, I finished the book. I worked on it every single day for 6 years, and finally came out with it last year. It's Real Impact Daily Inspiration. And the reviews I'm getting, I challenge everybody, go to Amazon and read the reviews. It's amazing what the book is doing with people. So anyway, long answer to a short question.
No, that's great. I appreciate the backstories for that answer because it really sets the tone for talking about your book. And once again, you just now tuned in, listen to Refocus Radio, and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Dennis J. Henson. Go to his website, realimpactbook.com. That's what we're talking about today. And I want to talk about also challenges that you face in your 5 decades of business, because we all know that in order to really to see good results, you're going to have some pain points along the way. Kind of address that for the audience so that they know it wasn't easy for you.
Well, business is generally not easy. I think probably the definition of business is solving problems, because if you're in a business and you don't have any problems, you better look out because they're coming. Nature doesn't permit vacuums. And if you're in business and you don't have problems, that's a vacuum. And the longer you don't have a problem, the bigger the vacuum and the bigger the problem's going to be. And you can look at super successful people. I mean, just pick the top people in business today and look at them and just do a little bit of research. It won't take long the most successful people in business, if you look into their past, you're going to see bankruptcies. You're going to see where they just got by. Like Elon Musk came this close to losing everything. He had to fly all the way on the other side of the world to talk someone into giving him a loan so he could make payroll. So it's, business is like that. If I tried to cover all of the problems that I've faced through the years, this program would have to last several hours, and then I wouldn't have covered them all. So no, it wasn't an easy climb. But what the book teaches you is this. It's about getting up when you get knocked down. Life's going to knock you down. If you're in business, you're going to have some serious setbacks. Edison, before he became the super inventor that he was an inventor, and he had a large laboratory. But back then, all the buildings were made of wood. He was doing hundreds of experiments and had a big staff. Well, one night, one of the experiments went bad, and his laboratory caught on fire and burned to the ground. He lost everything, every experiment he was working on, and he was 65 years old. Well, all of the inventions that we know that Edison did, maybe with the exception of one, happened after that fire.
Yep. So,
it didn't affect him. He started building again the next morning. The only thing that was left was a pile of ashes, and the next morning he started building again and did everything. Of course, it helped a little bit when Henry Ford gave him $250,000 to help him get started. But that's not the point. The point is, even if Ford hadn't given him the money, we'd still know Edison, because he was just the kind of guy you couldn't hold down.
I think that's a great thing to think about from the point that sometimes you have to start over. Sometimes it's a hidden blessing to start over, because if you had not started over, you would not have the wisdom, the patience, you wouldn't know the definition of being committed without having to start from ground zero. I had that recently happen to me a couple of weeks ago. I lost my website, the armyfocusradio.com that I had for years. And the provider, I was like, man, I'm crushed. Like, all my blogs, everything is poof, it's gone. And I had to switch provider, and I had to start my website all from scratch. And I remember that process vividly. I had all the emotions. I was mad. I was sad. I was depressed. But I said, you know what? I cannot have a website. So I stayed up, and I did not go to sleep. I was up till 5, 6 in the morning, building my website from scratch again, my new provider, and they stay on the phone with me. I said, hey, this is an emergency. I don't have the luxury of not having a website. The show is too important, and it's not for me, it's for my community. And I understand directly what it means to start from zero, because it's never fun, but the wisdom you gain from it is what I just mentioned, the patience, and the real definition of being committed to something that's bigger than yourself.
Shemaiah, what you're saying is exactly what this book's about. It's story after story after story of people whose names you'll recognize. Hershey, Lincoln, Walt Disney. I mean, it's just Mary Kay. It's one story after another of people that you think, wow, they were super successful. But when you read their story, you'll find out they weren't always successful. They had some serious problems along the way. But what's amazing was that they, just like you said, they learned from their mistakes or their problems, and then they just got up, dusted their pants off. It's almost like nothing happened. They just went on. And one time, Walt Disney lost all of his characters and all of his animators. He went from being a super successful to having nothing, no characters, no one working for him. Well, actually, two of them stayed, and his business partner and his brother. But that wasn't enough to do, what needed to be done. And they didn't have anything to do anyway because they lost all of the characters. They had to start from scratch. Luckily, scratch was Mickey Mouse. So it worked out pretty good.
Once again, you're listening to Refocus Radio and watching us online. We're talking to our guest today, Dennis J. Henson, and we're talking about his book, Real Impact. Go to his website, realimpactbook.com. And when you think about how we have these barriers in our mindset, they prevent us from reaching our full potential. When we are in the thick of things, when life gets real, and those storms actually come your way, you have to double down on what you know is your value system, and you have to really push through. What are some of the things that we can do, generally speaking, to kind of get bypass that in the funk? Because when it gets crazy, it's like sink or swim.
I'm glad you asked that question, because that's what this book is about. That if you go and look on the Amazon reviews, some of those people said, I was going through a terrible time. My business was having a problem, and this book came at exactly the right time. So the book is kind of like magic. I don't know. Can you see the lamp on the front of the book? Okay, that's Aladdin's lamp. And you probably know the story of Aladdin, where this young man came into possession of a lamp, and when he was cleaning it, he found out if he rubbed it, it had magical powers. It would give him anything he wanted. Well, the reason the lamp's on the front of this book is because it's very similar. If you take this book and use it, it says it has an introduction, and it has the magic formula. And if you use that magic formula, you'll get your wishes. Now, that sounds ridiculous, I know, but it's a law of nature. If you do what it says, all of nature, all of the universe works together to get you what you want. Now, I'm not going to tell you a lot more because I want you to read the book. But I tell you what, I'm going to give everybody that's listening in, if it's okay with you, a copy of the ebook. So if you go to realimpactbook.com and scroll all the way to the bottom where it says podcast attendees, click on that, put your name and email address, and you'll get an instant download. Now, don't wait for an email. You'll get an instant download as soon as you put that in there. In fact, if you're listening right now before this podcast is over, you can have the ebook. The thing about the ebook is this. You're going to read it and think, oh, my cousin could use this. Or I know this guy that's having a problem with his business. This is what he needs to read. Or someone's graduating from high school or college. You think, oh, this will set them on the right path. Or someone in a nursing home that's bored and just needs some really interesting stories. And if you go to realimpactbook.com, their very first link up there says the mystery of the lamp. And so you click on there, and there is an audio that explains why it seems like magic. It's like inertia or gravity. They seem like magic. I mean, gravity, when you drop something, it always goes down. It's like magic. It always never goes up. So if you learn to use these laws of nature, I just finished another book called The Laws of Nature of Success. Now, that's not out yet, but when you go and get your free ebook, there's a link there that you want to click if you want to know when my new books come out. Now, you will not be put on a mailing list if you get the book. I'm not trying to collect the mailing list. Unless you want to know when I have other books, then you have to click that link, and then I'll send you a notice. I've done Real Impact 2, Real Impact 3, The Laws of Nature, The 7 Secrets. when those come out, you'll be notified, but you're not going to be bugged. I don't like spam, and no one else does, so I don't do that.
Well, I appreciate that gift for our audience. I'll make sure that I put that in the show notes for people so that they know exactly where they need to go. So I do want to say thank you for that. That's amazing. I want to encourage our audience. Don't take that lightly, especially when guests, when they're offering some of the value. Don't just brush it off. At least explore it and check it out. Pass it along to a friend or family, because that's really great that you're willing to do that. My next question would be, a lot of times in our busy lives, we kind of depend on bursts of inspiration, right?
Yes.
What are some ways that people can create lasting motivation versus depending only on those short-term, highs, if you will?
I hate to keep coming back to the same thing, but that's exactly why this book was created, because if you form the habit of reading something positive every day, that moves you toward your goal. Let's go back to the story of Aladdin. He had the lamp, he rubbed the lamp, the genie came out and said, "Master," and then he said, "What do you want?" You have to make 3 wishes, and Aladdin had to decide right then, I want this, this, and this. Well, that's the magic. If you know what you want, and people think, so many people want to know, well, why am I here? What's my purpose in life? If they'll just be quiet and meditate, the purpose in life, it comes to them all the time. It's just like an ant. How do they know what to do? Well, nature tells them what to do. You'll know what to do too if you just be quiet and listen to your desires. Your desires are your purpose. Your desires are gifts from God. But so many people, they get up, they go to work, they come home, they drink a beer, they watch TV, they go to bed, and then they do the same thing every single day, and they'll think, boy, look at that. I'd love to be an engineer. And then say, yeah, but I don't have the money, but I don't have this, but I don't have that. Their butts get in the way. So they got to get their butts out of the way and say, I'd like to be an engineer, and I'm reading about becoming an engineer every single day. I'm talking to engineers. I'm looking at engineering school. I'm doing everything that's necessary. Abraham Lincoln at one time in his life was super failure. I mean, he was just failing at everything. He had several businesses that failed. He failed in politics. He just wasn't doing well. He described himself as a piece of driftwood, just a drifting piece of driftwood. He didn't know what he wanted to do. So he came into possession of some old English law books. Now, he loved to read, and he read those law books over and over. He just fell in love with them. So he started attending court trials. And when he got in the courtroom and was listening to what was going on, he looked around and he said, I'm home. This is what I was meant to be. Now, he had less than a first grade education. He was a failure. He didn't have any money. He had all of the reasons in the world not to become an attorney. He would have to pass the Illinois bar, which was not easy. You had to complete college or do that. But he said, no, I'm going to do that. He was determined, and he did it. And then he went on to become the president of the United States. So listen to your desires, because they're gifts. And instead of saying yes, but say yes, and I'm going to move in that direction. And this book will help you form the habit of reading something positive every day that will move you in the direction. Now, here's the key. If you read something every day, you have to remember the direction every day. It's like putting a rudder on a boat. If a boat's out in the middle of the ocean, it doesn't have a rudder, it's never going to get sharp. It's just going to go and on. It may get somewhere, but it probably won't be where you want to be. But if you put a rudder on it, then you can go wherever you want to go. That's what this book does for you. It heads you in the direction that you're supposed to be going in. And you probably never heard this before. You know, it's kind of a new way of thinking, but it really works. And if you look like I have and investigate the lives of super successful people, this is exactly what they've done, you know. And I have another book called The 7 Secrets of Success that really will get you on track. I don't want to make you wonder. I'll tell you what they are. That get your mind right, seek wisdom, develop skills, make detailed plans, take massive action, form great alliances, and being persistent. So that's the 7 secrets, and I have an entire book about that. Every successful person I've ever read about went through those 7 things. They were good at all 7 of those. And anybody can do it. I mean, all of the people that super successful, wonderful people were just people like me and you when they started. They just found the formula.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio and watching us online, talking to our guests today, Dennis J. Henson. Go to his website, realimpactbook.com. Make sure you get it on Amazon, anywhere that you can buy the book. I want to say, like always, this was a very great show that I'm going to be listening to myself. I always tell people, man, you got to listen to these shows because there's a reason why I'm being quiet, because this information, you probably be spending a lot of money somewhere else trying to get access to it. So I want to say to you, Dennis, thank you for not just sharing information about your book, but the other books that you're working on. Appreciate you giving us a teaser on that as well. If someone wants to get access to that ebook, can you say that one more time? I'll make sure I put it in the show notes.
Sure. Go to realimpactbook.com, scroll to the bottom. The last tab says podcast attendee. Click on that, put in your name and email, and it will be immediately downloaded to you. Also, there's a tab at the top that says help the children. I have a GoFundMe program where I'm giving this book away to disadvantaged communities, to libraries and disadvantaged communities and schools that don't have budgets for their library. And so if you want to help the kids, just give a few dollars, you know, that will help. And every penny, it's not like some president makes a lot of money. No, every penny goes toward purchasing books to give to kids for continuing education and child literacy to help with that.
Well, once again, I want to say to our guest, Dennis, like always, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.